Picture the blinding, claustrophobic fog of a freezing North Atlantic morning. It is 1884. You are standing on the wooden deck of a crippled steamship, and the world around you has just been entirely swallowed by this milky white void.
Right, where visibility drops to absolute zero.
Exactly. You literally cannot see the mast above your head. You can't see the freezing water churning just feet below the railing.
It is total sensory deprivation.
Yeah, every visual anchor to reality is just erased, so all you have left are your ears. And out of that absolute whiteout, you hear a sound growing louder.
Just that slow, rhythmic build.
Right, it's relentless.
Yeah.
The heavy, metallic, bone-rattling churn of a massive steam engine approaching through the mist. You can hear the water tearing around a heavy iron hull.
And you know it's coming directly for you.
You do. But the true paralyzing terror of this moment is that, as an absolute undeniable fact, that the ship hunting you through the fog has no one at the helm.
Oh, man. That scenario strips away like every modern illusion of control we have.
I mean, it really does.
Yeah. We are placing you, the listener, in a historical reality where the ocean was largely this unmapped, indifferent void. In 1884, a massive iron-hulled machine bearing down on you through the gloom.
Yeah.
That would immediately trigger centuries of maritime superstition.
Oh, for sure. Ghosts, curses, all of it.
Exactly. Every instinct in a 19th century sailor's mind would scream that they were being stalked by a phantom, some cursed vessel seeking revenge.
But the reality is actually scarier, I think.
It is, because the horror of this specific event, the collision between the British steamer, the Rumney, and the French vessel, the Frigorifique, it is entirely rooted in documented physics.
And catastrophic human error.
Right. We are looking at an event where a machine seemingly hunted down its own crew, but it was driven not by the supernatural, but by this bizarre, terrifying alignment of panic and mechanical momentum.
So to really reconstruct this nightmare minute by minute for this deep dive, we have to pull ourselves away from our current era.
Yeah, forget radar, GPS, satellite communication, all of that is gone.
We need to ground ourselves in the fragility of late 19th century maritime navigation, because this was the dawn of the industrial age at sea.
Right, it was. Ships were transitioning to these heavy iron hulls and massive steam engines,
which gave them immense kinetic energy. But their sensory capabilities were still fundamentally, medieval.
That's a great way to put it. Navigation on the open ocean relied on crude mechanical steering chains, prevailing winds, and human eyesight.
Right. Literally just a guy standing on a deck looking into the dark.
Exactly. So if a fog bank rolled in, a vessel carrying thousands of tons of cargo at 10 knots was effectively flying blind.
And we really need to examine the physics of that blindness. Because fog on the open ocean isn't just a visual impairment, is it?
No, it actually actively distorts reality. There's this phenomenon called acoustic shadowing.
Acoustic shadowing. Okay, break that down for us.
So when warm air sits over freezing water, which is exactly what causes this type of dense advection fog, it creates a temperature inversion. And sound waves travel faster in warm air than in cold air. So this actually causes the sound to bend downward, bounce off the water, and scatter unpredictably.
Wait, really? The sound actually bends?
It bends. So a lookout on the deck of the Frigorifique might hear the whistle of another ship and perceive it as being, say, 3 miles away off the port bow.
When in reality?
When in reality, it's 300 yards away on the starboard side.
Oh, wow. So you are floating in this sensory vacuum where even the laws of acoustics are actively lying to you.
Precisely. And that acoustic deception is the direct prelude to the violence of the first strike.
Right. So the French ship, the Frigorifique, and the British steamer, the Rumney, are navigating this vacuum.
Blindly.
Blindly. There's no warning, no sudden braking, just the deafening, catastrophic sound of tearing metal.
The splintering of heavy wooden beams.
Yeah, as the two massive vessels collide in the whiteout. The kinetic energy of thousands of tons of iron and cargo crashing together violently shudders through the decks.
Then are thrown off their feet.
In an instant, the silence of the fog is replaced by total disorienting chaos.
And the mechanical destruction is terrifying, obviously, but the psychological breakdown that immediately follows aboard the French ship, the Frigorifique, that is the actual catalyst for the nightmare.
Yeah, the human element here is it's fascinating and so dark.
Sociologists who study crowd dynamics and disaster survival, they refer to this specific cognitive failure as panic contagion.
Panic contagion, meaning like fear spreading like a virus.
Exactly. When the impact occurs, The sympathetic nervous system of the crew completely overrides the prefrontal cortex.
The logical, analytical part of the brain just shuts down entirely.
It's gone. In the disorientation of the fog and the traumatic shock of the crash, the French crew does not run damage control.
They don't sound the bilges to check the water level.
No. They feel the violent shudder, they hear the screaming metal, and they make a rapid, fatal assumption.
They collectively decide the vessel has suffered a mortal wound and is going to sink in minutes.
I have to pause here. Because the idea that professional sailors would just abandon their posts without even verifying the damage...
It seems almost incomprehensible from a distance, right?
Yeah. We expect a command structure to hold. But to put it into a context we might recognize today, it's somewhat similar to being in a severe car accident on an unlit, pitch-black highway.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. The airbags violently deploy, the windshield shatters, and you are completely disoriented.
Your ears are ringing?
Exactly. And instead of putting the car in park, turning off the ignition, and checking yourself for injuries, the sheer adrenaline makes you kick the door open and run blindly into the oncoming traffic lane.
Because your brain has manufactured this overwhelming certainty that the car is about to explode.
Exactly. The fear completely bypasses logic. The perceived threat is so total that it demands immediate physical escape.
It is close to fleeing a car crash, yes. But we have to add one terrifying mechanical layer to that analogy.
What's that? Imagine fleeing that damaged car on the highway, but you leave a brick heavy on the accelerator.
Oh, God.
Right. Because unlike a car engine that might just stall out, a marine steam engine of that era does not idle. It continuously builds and utilizes pressure.
Wow.
But regarding the psychology of the crew, your point about the breakdown of command is crucial. Panic operates as a highly contagious virus in confined spaces.
Right. If one terrified crewman screams that the hull is breached,
that unverified information is instantly adopted as absolute truth by the man next to him. The survival instinct screams that any delay is a death sentence.
which leads directly to this frantic, desperate evacuation.
Yeah.
The French crew abandons the Frigorifique to the mist. They are scrambling down the sides of their ship, launching lifeboats into zero-visibility water.
Throwing themselves across the tangled, grinding wreckage to get aboard the Rumney.
The British ship they just collided with. Because the Rumney represents solid ground to them. It represents salvation.
They view the British vessel as their only lifeline out of the freezing water.
And the transfer of the crew in those conditions is just harrowing.
It's absolute pandemonium. The British crew aboard the Rumney is simultaneously attempting to assess their own structural damage.
While suddenly being inundated by a terrified, scrambling French crew boarding their vessel from the fog.
Right, but despite the chaos, the transfer is successful. Every single member of the French crew makes it onto the deck of the British steamer.
You can almost feel the collective heavy exhale on the deck of the Rumney.
Oh, definitely. The adrenaline begins to recede.
The French survivors are shivering, likely in shock, but they're breathing deeply. They're alive.
And meanwhile, the British crew completes a rapid assessment of their own ship.
Right. The Rumney has sustained damage to her hull, yes, but her pumps can handle the water ingress.
She's stable. She's not going down.
So the decision is made to slowly, carefully limp toward the nearest port.
The atmosphere is still tense, obviously. They're navigating a damaged steamer through a blinding fog, burdened with double the crew.
But the worst of the terror scenes behind them. They've survived the inciting incident.
And that perceived safety is the ultimate false dawn.
Yeah, it really is.
Because while the human drama of survival is playing out on the deck of the Rumney, we have to shift our analytical focus back to the machine they left behind in the impenetrable white mist.
The Frigorifique.
Exactly. The French crew, in their absolute unthinking panic to abandon ship, committed a fatal error of omission. They left the steam engines running.
Wait, I need to push back on the mechanics of that.
Sure.
We're talking about 1884. This isn't a modern diesel engine. You just leave running with a key in the ignition.
Right.
These ships were powered by coal. And coal requires human labor.
It does.
It requires engineers monitoring boiler pressure and stokers constantly shoveling fuel into the fireboxes. So if the entire crew abandons the ship, the human labor stops immediately.
Logically.
Yeah. So logically, wouldn't the fires just burn out, the pressure drop, and the engine die within a matter of minutes?
That is a highly logical assumption, but it fundamentally underestimates the thermal inertia of a 19th century marine boiler.
Thermal inertia. Okay, break that down.
We are talking about massive iron furnaces lined with firebrick, containing tons of burning coal operating at peak thermal capacity.
Oh, wow. So they're basically man-made volcanoes in the belly of the ship.
Exactly. When the crew bolted, those fires didn't simply extinguish. The combustion process in those vast chambers sustains itself for a significant period.
Because it's just so hot in there already.
Right. The water in the boilers is already superheated. The heavy iron pistons are already pumping. The massive propeller at the stern is still biting into the ocean water.
That is terrifying.
Deep in the belly of the Frigorifique, the mechanical heart of the ship is entirely indifferent to the absence of its crew. It does not know it has been abandoned.
It just continues to execute the physical actions it was built for, converting heat into forward momentum.
It becomes a pure manifestation of persistent momentum, fed by the residual heat of the unmanaged furnaces and subject to the external forces of strong ocean currents and prevailing winds pushing against its superstructure.
So the Frigorifique was not sinking to the bottom of the Atlantic.
No, it was transforming into an autonomous, unguided weapon.
That realization is chilling. As a listener, you understand something. The traumatized survivors on the Rumney do not.
They have no idea.
Hidden out there in the fog, the Frigorifique is alive. It's armed with thousands of tons of forward momentum, slicing blindly through the water with absolutely zero human oversight.
Just a wall of iron.
But, I mean, if it's just moving forward, the ocean is vast.
True.
The mathematical probability of two ships crossing paths twice in the open ocean, especially when one is trying to limp away, seems astronomically low.
It does.
So why didn't the Frigorifique simply steam off in a straight line toward the horizon until the coal finally burned out?
It comes down to the structural violence of the initial crash.
The first collision.
Right. The collision with the Rumney did not breach the Frigorifique's hull enough to sink her, obviously, but it inflicted critical damage on a highly vulnerable component.
The steering gear.
Yes. In vessels of this era, the rudder is controlled by a massive geared arc at the stern called a steering quadrant, and it's connected to the wheel by heavy chains.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
When the heavy iron bow of the Rumney struck, the sheer force warped that steering quadrant. The heavy iron rudder was jammed and locked tightly at a fixed angle.
Oh my God, so the ship is no longer capable of sailing a straight line.
No. The damaged rudder forces a continuous turn. We have to look at the hydrodynamic forces at play here.
Okay.
You have a massive propeller generating continuous forward thrust, right?
Right.
But you have a jammed rudder acting as a fixed hydrodynamic foil, constantly redirecting that thrust into rotational force.
So the ship is caught in a geometric trap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Frigorifique is locked into an inescapable, continuous, wide circular course. It is a mathematically perfect death spiral.
Wow. Think of tying a string to a motorized toy boat in a swimming pool.
That's a great visual.
The motor desperately wants to push the boat forward across the water, but the tension of the string, or in this case, the damaged rudder, forces it to constantly turn inward.
It just traces the exact same circle over and over again.
Frigorifique wasn't drifting aimlessly into the Atlantic. It was tethered to the geographic center of the accident, sweeping through the fog in these massive blind loops.
And the geometry of that path is precisely why this specific event birthed such profound ghost ship legends among the maritime community.
Because it doesn't look like an accident.
Exactly. When you look at the behavior of the Frigorifique from the perspective of a terrified sailor, it does not look like a mechanical failure. It looks deeply, intentionally malicious.
Because it mimics predatory behavior.
It does.
It looks like a beast pacing its cage, or a predator circling a wounded animal. You have a quote-unquote dead ship, abandoned by its crew, refusing to sink, and instead actively returning to the scene of the violence.
It is almost impossible for the human brain not to anthropomorphize that. The mind assigns a vengeful intent to the machine.
Like the ship is seeking revenge on the vessel that struck it.
Right. And, the supernatural explanation, ironically, provides a comforting illusion of narrative.
Comforting? How so?
Well, a cursed ship seeking revenge has a motive, right? There's a reason for it. But the reality is vastly more horrifying because it is utterly devoid of motive.
Yeah, there's no malice.
None. There was no supernatural entity at the helm. There was only the cold, unthinking, mechanical inevitability of an erratic orbit.
The Frigorifique was merely obeying the laws of motion and hydrodynamics?
Exactly. And the tragedy is that the Rumney, heavily damaged and creeping slowly away from the center of that crash site, was still trapped deep within the radius of that lethal circle.
Let's put ourselves back on the wooden deck of the Rumney.
Okay.
Survivors are cold, they're exhausted, they're huddled together in the freezing mist. They believe they are escaping.
They think it's over.
The fog remains this thick, oppressive wall, limiting vision to just a few feet over the railing. And then the auditory terror begins again.
Faintly at first.
Yeah, echoing strangely through that moisture-heavy air. The muffled, heavy churning of a steam engine. Thump, thump, thump.
The psychological weight of that sound is just immense. Imagine the crew members looking at each other in the whiteout.
The confusion must have been paralyzing. Like, who else could possibly be out here?
Is it a rescue vessel? Or is it another blind ship about to strike them?
But the sound isn't fading into the distance, it is steadily amplifying.
The Doppler effect of the massive engine cutting through the acoustic shadows of the fog.
Is the sound of their own past mistake, literally catching up to them. They abandoned a running machine, and now the machine has returned.
As the sound reaches a deafening pitch, the visual horror finally manifests.
The fog begins to darken just off the beam.
Yeah, a massive towering silhouette breaks through the white wall.
And in those final agonizing seconds, as the shape resolves into the bow of a heavy iron steamer, the sheer psychological horror shatters the French crew.
Because they recognize the specific lines of the hull.
They recognize the rigging on the mast. They're staring directly at the Frigorifique, their own ship, completely unmanned, moving at speed, bearing down directly on top of them.
And there's absolutely nothing they can do.
Nothing. You can scream into the fog, but there's no helmsman on the Frigorifique to hear you.
There is no captain to desperately signal to order a hard turn to starboard.
You are screaming at a deaf wall of iron driven by the very coal fires you stoked yourself. You cannot reason with a machine.
The mechanical indifference is total. The Frigorifique strikes the Rumney for the second time.
And the physics of this second collision are devastating.
They really are. The Rumney is already compromised, structurally weakened from the first impact.
It cannot withstand a second direct hit from a heavy steamer operating under engine power.
The iron hull of the British ship is breached critically below the waterline. The freezing Atlantic water violently rushes into the lower decks.
The bitter, tragic irony of this sequence of events is almost difficult to process.
It really is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of the most twisted, literal kind.
The French crew, driven by an irrational, panic-induced assumption that their ship was sinking, abandoned it to seek safety.
But the Frigorifique was not sinking. It was structurally sound enough to keep running.
And the ship they fled to, the Rumney, ended up being the vessel that was destroyed. And it was destroyed by the very ship they abandoned.
Their premature terror directly manufactured the destruction of the vessel that attempted to rescue them. The Rumney is sent to the bottom of the Atlantic by the relentless, crewless Frigorifique.
Now, eventually, the survivors are rescued from the water and make it to port.
Miraculously, yes.
But the historical records of the maritime inquiries that followed must have been chaotic.
Oh, absolutely unhinged. Imagine standing before a board of experienced Admiralty investigators and insurance adjusters and trying to explain this.
You have to look them in the eye and report that your ship was sunk by your own abandoned automated vessel.
It defies rational belief. Initially, it probably sounded like the raving of traumatized minds desperately trying to invent a cover story for gross incompetence.
Like, oh, the ghost of our ship came back and hit us.
Exactly. But the physical evidence and the corroborated testimonies proved it was entirely true.
It's just wild. The legacy of this incident encapsulates the core themes of maritime horror so perfectly.
It really does. We see the hubris of the industrial age, the belief that building massive, powerful machines gives us dominion over the ocean.
We see catastrophic human error, driven by the primal overriding power of fear.
And we see the terrible mathematical bad luck of a warped steering quadrant locking a ship into a circular path.
But overarching all of it is the terrifying realization that once we release these forces, they belong to the indifferent physics of the natural world.
Yeah, we lose control the second we step away.
And history processes these bizarre traumas in the strangest ways. I mean, there is a surreal, modern footnote to this entire ordeal that bridges the 1884 disaster to the present day.
Right, the warehouse.
Yes. The legend of the Frigorifique is so deeply entrenched in maritime lore that today, if you go to Saint-Laurent, Quebec, Canada, there's a large operational industrial warehouse.
And the name of this facility is literally Entrepôt Frigorifique Intel Inc.
A physical functioning structure bearing the name of a 19th century mechanical phantom.
It's amazing.
I marvel at the bizarre longevity of that. You have this terrifying adrenaline-soaked disaster on the high seas, a story of freezing fog, blind panic, and a relentless mechanical stalker that hunts down its own creators.
And today, what is the legacy of that nightmare?
It is a commercial warehouse with a 3.3-star rating on Google Reviews.
It's so weird.
It shows how we take these profound historical traumas and slowly digest them until they become mundane parts of our modern landscape.
A terrifying struggle for survival, reduced to a mildly dissatisfied online review about loading dock wait times.
It is a way of domesticating the terror, I think. By turning the name of a ghost ship into a corporate entity, we strip it of its lethal history.
We make it safe.
Exactly. But if we peel back that modern layer and examine the mechanics of the 1884 incident, the psychological takeaways remain incredibly stark.
This event operates as a masterclass in the destructive power of unmanaged fear.
It demonstrates that panic does not merely force us to flee a perceived danger, it actively manufactures new, far more complex and lethal dangers.
The French crew's premature terror over a sinking ship guaranteed a real shipwreck.
As we conclude this deep dive, I want you to reflect on the concept of persistent momentum in your own life.
Yeah, that's the real takeaway here.
We are obviously not navigating steamships through the freezing North Atlantic, but consider the underlying mechanics of human behavior.
How often do we abandon a situation in an absolute panic?
A complex relationship, a highly stressful job, a difficult looming conversation. The pressure builds, the fear takes over, and we just bolt.
But in our desperate rush to escape the immediate discomfort, we leave the engines running.
We don't shut things down properly. We refuse to resolve the core issue.
And then, how often do our own unresolved mistakes, powered by the persistent momentum of our own avoidance, lock into a wide orbit?
They circle back out of the fog and strike us exactly when we believe we have finally found safe harbor.
The psychological parallel is just undeniable. The actions we initiate and then abandon out of fear do not simply cease to exist.
They retain the energy we gave them.
If left unmanaged, they have a terrifying tendency to return and collide with us.
We invent ghost stories to make sense of tragedies, to give chaos a face we can understand.
But consider the true, documented history of the Frigorifique.
What is truly more terrifying? A cursed phantom ship seeking supernatural revenge from beyond the grave, or the cold, hard realization that the most dangerous monsters hiding in the dark are simply the machines we leave running when we run away in fear.